everyone, and welcome to... This is Africa, and here's Sudan. Now let's go, shall we? Beginning way back in those dusty days of stone, Sudan's story is an extremely ancient one. It was in this country, perhaps, that war was invented, for the earliest known evidence for collective belligerency was unearthed here. Multiple skeletons testifying to violent deaths from various weapons. In the creatively named culture that followed, the region's artists proved skillful, but their creatively named culture ultimately crumbled before the first dynasty of Egypt to the north. Now it's worth noting that much of what we call Sudan was known to the ancient world as Nubia, and around 2500 BC, a mighty Nubian civilization popped up and lasted 1,000 years. Then it ended, just as a small fish is eaten by a big underwater giraffe with sunglasses. Okay. So the land of Nubia was conquered by the new kingdom of Egypt. Nubia naturally adopted and was influenced by Egyptian customs and culture, but this did not prevent them from rebelling over the many years of foreign occupation. The new kingdom era was the strongest Egypt ever got, and then it ended, and Nubia was like, aha, now's my chance, and it set up another powerful state. This was the kingdom of Kush, whose rulers even managed to conquer Egypt, and ruled as the pharaohs of the 25th dynasty. The Nubian Kushites were energetic builders, and were fond of making their own variety of pyramids, rather pointier than the traditional ones. Their greatest king was Taharka, who built and conquered and was quite fond of having statues of himself made. Nubian rule in Egypt was eventually ended by the invading Assyrians in the mid-600s BC, but they remained in charge of their homeland and once more established a flourishing state. This one centered around the city of Meroe, which accumulated wealth via a strong iron industry and trade. Centuries passed. The Romans conquered Egypt and made peace with Kush to the south. But for all their construction and all their clever craftsmanship, the kingdom of Kush ended, as all do. The Ethiopian empire of Axum invaded and destroyed the grand capital, and that was the end of that. Smaller Nubian kingdoms, such as Mahdiyya, arose in its wake. Mahdiyya managed to defeat the invading Arabs in the 7th century, and a peace agreement was signed that stood in place for hundreds of years. Over these centuries, the religion of Islam gained more and more ground in Nubia, which the Arabs named Sudan, from a phrase meaning land of the blacks. Arab influence and usage of the Arabic language slowly grew. In 1821, the Ottoman ruler of Egypt, Muhammad Ali, ordered an invasion of Sudan, and the Ottomans subsequently took control over much of the region. Meanwhile, the economy was suffering due to pressure from Europeans aiming to end the slave trade, an institution that made many Sudanese merchants a lot of money. There was further anger that the Ottomans were employing European Christians for administration. In answer to this anger arose a Muslim cleric called Muhammad Ahmad, who believed himself to be the Mahdi, a savior figure whom Muslims believe will appear at the end of the world. He whipped up a revolt against Egypt and scored a major win with the siege of Khartoum, where he massacred the defenders. A few months later, however, the Mahdi died of typhus fever, and his followers ended up defeated after the British stepped in and thrashed them, commanded by the famous Lord Kitchener. British rule saw the introduction of modernization and lasted until 1956, when Sudan gained independence. In 1969, the government was toppled in a coup, and a military Islamist dictatorship was installed, exacerbating the unrest in South Sudan, which was largely non-Muslim and non-Arabic speaking. The South Sudanese had already tried to break away from northern Sudan, and now they tried again. Over 20 years of fighting and over 1 million casualties, and in 2011, South Sudan gained independence and split from Sudan, which was now no longer the largest country in Africa. The dictator of Sudan, meanwhile, was indicted by the International Criminal Court, accused of genocide and other horrible things. He nevertheless remained in power until 2019, when he was kicked out in a coup. In 2023, more trouble erupted among government rivals, and death and horror reappeared in Sudan, a country which today possesses a low level of human development, with poverty and corruption sadly very prominent. Hopefully happier times await this troubled nation, but till then, it's bye from me for now. Bye-bye!